the worst thing you can do as a visitor to gym is something that I think it usually happens with white belts because they just don't know any better, is whatever your gym does, don't think of that as the way, right? Not every coach is like that. Not every coach tells you what you're learning is the way, but there are some gyms who tell their students, insert whatever affiliation here is the real jiu-jitsu, and we have all the answers. And so if you come in and you've been taught that by your coach, and then you go to a different affiliation who does things differently, and then they're teaching even something as simple as a cross collar choke, and they're teaching it differently, don't raise your hand and be like, but my coach says, like, that's, you're just going to be seen as kind of silly and rude. Now, on the other hand, I am a big proponent of asking questions and asking like, hey, you're doing this detail, why would you do that? But I would recommend, if you're at a new gym, don't ask that in front of the whole class and slow people down. Wait till you've broken up and ask a question. Hey coach, I noticed that you did this thing. I've done it this way in the past. Can you tell me why you do that little detail?
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has a wide experience in other martial arts as well. He studied everything from judo to kung fu to submission wrestling and kickboxing. He's a full-time coach, and he travels the world teaching Jiu-Jitsu as well. In fact, he's taught in over 50 different countries. He's currently in Florida, and he's teaching once a week out of Rising Tide Jiu-Jitsu in Gainesville. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today for the second time on the show by Charles Harriott. How are you today, Charles?
I'm doing great.
Excellent, man. It's great to have you back. It's been a little while since we've had you on. I understand that you're not traveling quite as much right now. You've been mostly parked in Florida for the time being. Catch us up. Catch us up on everything you got going on lately.
So I'm still traveling, but it used to be that either myself or my fiance Natasha would go away and be gone for 6, 8, 10 weeks at a time in a location, whether it be somewhere in Asia or Europe or even in the US. These days, as we're shifting towards getting married and like having a family, I wanted to try my best to find a way if I could be here and be around, right? So that when I do have kids, I want to be able to be around. And so I'm traveling more inside the US. I'm still doing trips to Europe, and we want to go to Australia again in the future, but that's kind of the exception now. Whereas it used to be the rule to just kind of be gone. Now we're trying our best to be in Gainesville. Natasha's a massage therapist, so she has her own business here and her own private practice. And so actually been really good for her to be able to see her clients more regularly. And then for me, I'm teaching out of a gym here in Gainesville. I still kind of travel around Florida and the Southeast, but it's been an interesting transition from like kind of living in a backpack and in hotels and couches and mats to now like actually staying in my house. It's definitely got kind of nice. I get to cook a lot more, get to see my friends a lot more, but I still do have that kind of wanderlust. And so I miss the chaos and the travel a little bit sometimes. So we're still going to travel, but I think at a more human weekend, 4 days away versus the long epic trips that we used to do.
Obviously, a lot of people dream to travel, and especially travel teaching jiu-jitsu and training jiu-jitsu. So I understand that wanderlust you described probably never really goes away completely, but man, being able to go to 50 plus countries, that's something that I think most people, you're probably one of the very few people out there in the jiu-jitsu community that can have that honor to go to that many different places. So I can imagine the transition being weird though, bouncing from one country to another constantly and then suddenly just kind of being home.
I think it's an interesting transition because there's certain things. I think that not having something stable that I was committed to at home was what gave me the freedom to leave and not feel guilty. Because when I first got my black belt, there were people who were like, you should open a gym. And I felt that urge because like I love teaching. And so obviously wouldn't most people who teach do, they open a gym. But I knew that I wanted to travel, and I knew that if I opened that gym and like, hung my own shingle as people say, and then I was just never there, it just kind of felt wrong to me to have Charles Harriott Jiu-Jitsu. Well, where's Charles? Oh, he's gone. He's always gone. And that didn't feel right. And so that that conflict of wanting to kind of nurture the homegrown students, but also wanting to leave. I didn't feel comfortable kind of selling someone the bill of goods of like, you're here to have me teach you, and then I'm never there. So being able to be around a bit more and see people week in and week out, that's been really nice. But at the same time, like it's always both, right? So it's like I got lucky that I was given opportunities and that I put myself in a position to be able to say yes. I think that there are a lot of people who could actually do what I did, but what's holding them back is the fact that they have something at home that says, if I leave, bad things are going to happen. Whether that be a regular day job that doesn't allow remote work, or obviously like what I'm striving towards in a family where you want to be there for their life, right? I know some other instructors who have been lucky enough to just bring their family on the road with them, which is a pretty cool thing that some people can do. And I think maybe that might be something that Natasha and I look into, because she still is having the same thing as me. We're like, she kind of misses traveling a little bit now as well. We've been home for like, if we got back from our last trip to Europe in like October, I want to say. So we've been home for a few months now. And I've done a few trips around the US to like Alabama and a few other places, but it's not the same as like those epic trips that we've taken. So I think it's just it's understanding that everything is going to have its grass is always greener. Like being at home, you're like, oh my gosh, it'd be so great to be here, there, and there. But then when you're traveling, it's like, oh, it'll be so nice to like sleep in my own bed and cook my own food. Like, so I love cooking, like being at home every day and having my kitchen. Like I've gotten a chance to cook every day, and every day, like try my best to like Iron Chef whatever I'm making and like make something cool and interesting. And when you're on the road, you're usually eating takeout, or even if like some of the gyms are really kind and they'll like take us out to dinner or invite us to a really cool and unique spot. And like, we both love food. And so getting to eat like delicious gyros in Greece or doner kebab in Germany or wherever place, and like their cool and unique foods, like I absolutely love that. Simultaneously, sometimes I miss my cooking. And so like, to me, maybe everything also about food. I think about my life, lots of things are food. Like I switched to more jiu-jitsu from striking because I got tired of having cuts in my mouth and I couldn't taste food very well. And I'm like, oh, I can do jiu-jitsu and I don't have to have these cuts in my mouth. Like maybe everything is just about my stomach. I don't know.
Dude, I'm right. I'm a foodie myself, so I'm right there with you, man. Food is most of my motivation for anywhere I travel to. I'm like, okay, how's the cuisine out there?
Yeah,
I totally get that. But it's interesting what you said there, man. Like there's periods of your life where you're able to do things just depending on your career, depending on your responsibilities at home. There's a lot of people listening who might wish they could travel the way that you have and go to Europe or go to these different countries in Asia and all these cool exotic places you've been to.
Mm-hmm.
But they might not be in a situation in their life where they can pull that off just because of obligations. But I think it's really cool that you also emphasize that you guys are focusing a lot on traveling in the U.S. right now. Needless to say, there's tons of great places to go in the U.S. And especially if you're traveling for jiu-jitsu. I mean, man, every state has a cool spot somewhere. And, that's something to always keep in mind as well. What advice would you give to someone that doesn't have the means to travel internationally, but maybe could take every trip once a month, domestically?
I would say, I guess, first of all, you can take one of two routes. Route number one is there's two types of people, usually people who kind of know what they want and people who don't. If you're one of those people who's like, I want to be a champion, I want to do this, well, then obviously you're going to try to look for some very effective, not necessarily famous, but like coaches who are known for being very, very good in the element that you want. If you're a gi player, going to a gym where like it has a culture around IBJJF rules and gi-centric methodologies, and maybe you're going to end up somewhere in Texas or somewhere in New York or California. But it's not to be underestimated that there's a lot of off the beaten path, like great instructors. And we're in this cool time where a lot of them are sharing their approach to jiu-jitsu for free on YouTube and Instagram. And you could just be following somebody on Instagram and be like, wow, I really like the way this person teaches. I wonder where their gym is. And you find out that it's like a 2-hour flight from you, or even like a 4-hour drive, and go there and pay a mat fee or pay a week fee and get some amazing stuff. I've been pretty lucky that everybody that I've ever reached out to on social media and been like, hey, can I come train? Like, I can't even think of one time when they said no. Now, whether or not it's I get to come there as a coach and come coach, or I come there just as a student and learn, it's always been worth my time though. So last time I went to New York, I visited a good friend of mine, Luke, and we both went over to John Calistein's spot, and he's an amazing coach. Like I met him at a camp in Belgium years ago, and like every time I go visit John, despite learning from him like through the internet, and there's always something new. I always learn something from him, and it's not always necessarily going to be like, here's how I finish a heel look better, even though he's known for leg locks, but just knowing that like this person is not only obsessed with jujitsu, but obsessed with how they communicate and teach it will always help. So Calistine is one that I'd recommend just popping into in New York. Jason Rao is another amazing coach. I've only got to visit him once back when he was at Matt Serra before he had his own gym. But like, it was a gym full of giant savages, except for him and Fabian. I forget Fabian's last name. He's a competitor out of that gym. But everyone else are just giant, jacked monsters. And then there's Jason and Fabian who are like normal-sized humans. And so obviously to like handle that room of just savages at Matt Serra's gym, Rao had to get really, really technical. And so I learned a lot from him. So I think the advice would be like, don't be too picky. And so I guess on the other side of like the kind of chaos would just be, I go on skyscanner.com and I type in my local airport and I put to anywhere and I look at the cheapest price. And then I'm like, oh, I can get like a $15 flight to here. It's like some of the flights are like stupid cheap. All right. Is there any jiu-jitsu in that town? Oh, there's some jiu-jitsu in that town. Let's see. Might be something interesting there. And so that's if you want to like get off the beaten path. So I'm pretty lucky because I'm in the unique position of like, I think that I'm a pretty good teacher, but I don't necessarily have the competition accolades. And so I tend to go to a lot of like off the beaten path jiu-jitsu areas where I just got lucky that somebody from that area either went to a BJJ Globetrotters camp or found me on YouTube or Instagram, and they reach out to me and they're like, hey, do you want to come to, in the case of what happened last year, Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama was definitely not on my radar for a place to go. I found out that like, oh, BMAC is like right around the corner in Decatur. Oh, I didn't realize that how close that was. And so like, that's a famous gym in the area. So if I wanted to go there, it didn't actually work out to visit that time because I was teaching seminars when they were open, and when I was free, they were closed. I didn't get to go, but I got to go to, and I found out like I had an amazing time, and I found out I really enjoyed Huntsville, Alabama, and then ended up in Birmingham with a second seminar, and like a whole area of the country that I don't think is on the top of many people's lists. There was actually a lot of fun, like great people in Alabama jiu-jitsu. Like definitely not something you usually think of outside of BMAC, but like there's always something in most places. Same thing with when I ended up going to the Midwest. I had a friend that I met who invited me to his gym in Medina, suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And one of my other friends was like, hey, since you're going to Minneapolis, my gym's across the border in Wisconsin. Do you want to come and just take a class? I took a class at Alliance, Wisconsin. And like historically, Alliance has a reputation for being pretty team-oriented, very a little bit insular. But this gym was the opposite. This gym was like super like, we don't care what affiliation you're from. They welcomed me with open arms. And there was none of that, I guess, kind of stereotype that some of the bigger teams have about not being welcome to people out of the team. It was the opposite. It was incredibly welcoming. The owner was a black belt in both judo and jiu-jitsu, and I had an absolutely amazing time. And I got to roll with them, and I got to train with them, and like we got to exchange little ideas. And had I been closed-minded and been like, no, I'm just here to work, I would never have had that experience. And so I think the best advice I can give is make friends with people in the jiu-jitsu community, whether it be by going to camps or just the internet. Ask them if you can just come to their gym. Most gyms will say yes, and then just see what happens. It's amazing how welcoming the jiu-jitsu community is virtually everywhere. To me, I've been to, at this point, I think like over 200, maybe 300 gyms, and like I can count on one hand the ones that were not welcoming. Like most jiu-jitsu gyms are happy to have you. Now, there are cultural things I would say to keep in mind where like you might accidentally be committing like a cultural faux pas in the gym and not realize it. And so just kind of understanding that like this gym might be really serious about where and how you take your shoes off. Obviously, no one puts shoes on the mat. Everyone knows that. But there's some gyms where you take off your street shoes outside and you have to wear slippers on the floor inside the gym, or various little tiny things like that. And then if you break that rule, you look like you're being rude, or how hard you roll. There's like a bunch of little things that I would just say, try your best to ask questions of the gym. Like, hey, what's the culture here? Are we rolling to the death here? Or are we being gentle and friendly? Like, are leg locks, white belt friendly here? Or am I going by what's the rule set in the gym? Just these little questions you can ask to gauge what this gym is going to be like so that you don't come in and feel like, wow, these people are being mean to me. Meanwhile, like you're a D1 wrestler and you're clubbing people in the head and blast doubling them into the wall. But this is like a hobbyist gym with mostly like middle-aged people who are just trying to have fun. And they're wondering why you're murdering all their students and why you're being rude. On the other end, like if you're from a hobbyist gym and you walk into like the legendary Unity Open Mat in New York, everyone there wants to be a world champion or is a world champion, and they're going to eat you alive. And if you walk in there thinking it's going to be a walk in the park and then you get beat up, you think they're mean. And no, like you walked into a competition class for like the entire New York area. It's going to be violent in there.
Yeah. Not for sheep, for sure. Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that because I actually, my next question was going to be like your advice on etiquette for visiting places for people that do want to travel. Because I share your same experience. Like I haven't been to 50 countries like you, but I've traveled all across the U.S. I've been very lucky to be able to do that. And again, like you said, I can count on one hand too, the places that weren't super welcoming. Almost everyone was like stoked to have me and stoked to have really any visitors in town. So with that said, besides checking beforehand what some of the cultural rules are from gym to gym, what are some other good general ways to be a good visitor, a good visiting student?
I would say open your mind. The best advice I can say is the worst thing you can do as a visitor to gym is something that I think it usually happens with white belts because they just don't know any better, is whatever your gym does, don't think of that as the way. Right? Not every coach is like that. Not every coach tells you what you're learning is the way, but there are some gyms who tell their students, insert whatever affiliation here is the real jiu-jitsu, and we have all the answers. And so if you come in and you've been taught that by your coach, and then you go to a different affiliation who does things differently, and then they're teaching even something as simple as a cross-collar choke, and they're teaching it differently, don't raise your hand and be like, but my coach says, like, you're just going to be seen as kind of silly and rude. Now, on the other hand, I am a big proponent of asking questions and asking like, hey, you're doing this detail. Why would you do that? But I would recommend if you're at a new gym, don't ask that in front of the whole class and slow people down. Wait till you've broken up and ask a question. Hey, coach, I noticed that you did this thing. I've done it this way in the past. Can you tell me why you do that little detail? And then the coach will be, well, actually, we do this for this reason. They'll tell you why. Now you understand, oh, there's more than one version of this move. And there's a different set of people who do it this way for this reason. And you just deepened your understanding of jiu-jitsu by having an open mind to the fact that, like, there's a reason why we do this way. All the way into, like, the current, I think, big theme of jiu-jitsu right now is the ecological versus traditional debate, where like if you come from a traditional school and then you go visit like Bodega Jiu-Jitsu in New York or one of those gyms that's all eco, don't go in there with the attitude of like, hey, we're not warming up the way we do. Just embrace where you are and see how you like it, right? Like embrace the fact that we're doing things different, and that's the whole point of traveling, right? I always make the examples of talking about food. Like, don't be surprised when you go to Japan and you can't order a French fry. Like, that's okay. Like, you're not, that's why you left. That's why you went over here, was to try something different. Number one, your safety in traveling and training should be number one. Do not put yourself in a situation where you get bullied or egoed into, frankly, being injured or abused. If you go to a gym and you walk in there and you have an injury, or you're trying to roll at a moderate level and you look and you see people getting slammed and a situation where the level of rolling is beyond your comfort zone, if it's just a little bit and you're just afraid of losing, jump in there, have fun. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to get hurt, I have to go to work, you can say no to a roll. You might get a little bit of shame, like especially some gyms with more old school ones that are very much like, you might get the look of like, this guy's a wuss. But understand why you're there. Now, if you're a competitor and you're trying to like gain that toughness, by all means, jump in, get beat up, lose a lot, learn from it. But if that's not why you're there, if you're just there on your holiday and you snuck away from your family for a moment and you have to go to dinner tonight with your wife and kids or your husband and kids, or whoever, don't go in there and get your arm broken in practice because this is a gym that's training for pans and you're just taking a lunch break away from the family. Like, understand that there's a time and a place. So I'd recommend, if you're in a situation where you maybe have less experience in jiu-jitsu and you're afraid of getting like murdered, maybe choose a more chill gym. Or if you're a blue belt who's a blue belt competitor or a purple belt competitor, well, then yes, you want to get put there. So understand that it's okay to say no to roles, and also understand that in some gyms, who you ask to roll matters. Now you can be very much, I should be able to ask anyone to roll. If you go into a traditional gym, usually they're not going to want you to ask an upper belt to roll in a highly traditional gym. That's their culture. Those are their rules. You're in Rome. You do as the Romans do. You might think it's a stupid rule. I'm a black belt. I don't care if a white belt asks me to roll. But if I go to certain affiliations gyms, I'm not going to ask a black belt with more stripes than me to roll. Why? Because that's the rule in this gym. Even as a second degree black belt, there are people I can't ask to roll. And that's okay. I think just really letting go of your preconceptions. The last thing you want to do is go into a gym and try to prove that your way is better than theirs, because it's just a confrontational situation, and like, it's not fun for anybody, and all you're going to do is kind of look like an asshole. Like, it's not worth it. And so I think, be willing to say no to a roll. Be okay if someone says no to a roll with you. If you're a big jacked dude or just a larger person in general, and you go, even like a blue belt, you're a giant blue belt, and you go and ask the 130-pound black belt coach to roll and they say no to you, don't get your feelings hurt. Like, maybe they don't want to roll with you today. They have a whole life outside of you. This is not necessarily about you, and don't take it personal, which is the biggest thing. Don't take most stuff personal. There's cultural difference, especially if you're traveling either inside or outside the US. Sometimes it's just a cultural difference, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that this person doesn't want to play with you. Like, as much as it takes you back to like being a child and like, no one wants to play with me. Like, yeah, that happens sometimes. Like, and if it's in your home gym, maybe look in the mirror and be like, why does no one want to roll with me? There might be something about how you roll that makes people feel that you're unsafe. So it's always a good opportunity. So I think those would be my best pieces of advice. Keep yourself safe. Ask people to roll. Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones, because the roll, I think, is the most opportunity for things to go awry in a gym. Everyone has heard of the classic Matt Enforcer story where you go, say you're a blue belt, and you tap out one of the purple belts, and then you get smashed by one of their brown belts, right? Like, that happens everywhere. Not everywhere. Some gyms don't do the Matt Enforcer thing, but I think the easiest thing, is know what the rules are. There's some rules at your gym, like, they're not illegal, but they're frowned upon moves in jiu-jitsu, right? Like grinding your shoulder in someone's eye, or just holding someone in half guard for 5 minutes, or the smother choke, or twisters. There's a bunch of moves that might not necessarily be illegal, but they're frowned upon. Understand that if you do those moves, what you're doing is like poker. You just raise the stakes of this roll, and your opponent might call you. And now you're having a roll to the death when you thought you were having a hobbyist roll, because you didn't realize that little gesture told your opponent it's go time. So I would understand in general. You can even just Google it. Like, if there's stuff in your gym that you're like, the first time it was done to you, you were like, oh. If anything that was done to you the first time made you become the Pikachu meme, it's probably you should investigate not doing to strangers the first time you roll with them. I think that's a really good smell test. Like, if the first time it was done to you, like, you almost crapped yourself, maybe not a move for your first roll with a stranger, right? But also understand, at the other gym, it's not going to go both ways, because you're in their world, and I personally think that they shouldn't have to change their culture. So understand, like, hey, like, if you're going, well, first off, you go to a 10th Planet gym, they're going to try and twister you. Like, they just are. Like, understand that's where you're going. You might believe, well, it's a neck crank and it's a spinal, it's illegal. Guess what? In their gym, they might get a burrito if they twister you. There's some gyms, my favorite rule ever. If you get twisted, you owe that person a burrito. It's not a rule in every gym, but I love it. It's one of my favorite jiu-jitsu rules that I've acquired from around the world. If someone can twist you, you have to buy them a burrito. And I've never actually seen it enforced, like someone forcing someone who didn't want to. But usually it's like a tongue on the cheek, and like someone will give them a burrito, like laughing later on. I think it's hilarious. I think it's fun. I think it allows us to enjoy ourselves. It's not necessarily mean spirited. I think the more of that we have in jiu-jitsu, the better, where we can just smile and enjoy the fact that like this thing is fighting and it is self-defense and it is all that, but it's a way most of us release some stress.
Yeah, man, that was all tremendous advice, man. And I really appreciated what you were saying about understanding the culture, where you're coming from, and also the idea that when you're leaving your home base and going out to somewhere else, things will be different, and that's the whole point. That was a very good, as a very good point that you made. I think that, you know, jiu-jitsu has grown so much in a way that there really is a place for everybody. I mean, whatever your flavor it is, whatever it is you're looking for, it exists. And for your home gym, you should be very selective. You should be very you should have a strong filter to make sure that everything is matching what you're looking for in your home gym. But when you travel, you do have to be aware that, hey man, this is someone else's gym, someone else's rules, someone else's culture, and you can't walk in there expecting them to mold to your preferences just because you're a visitor. So
this is not something for everybody, but it's something that I personally did, which I think made me better at jiu-jitsu, which is if you are upper belt, if you're someone where you are a stronger competitor, resist the temptation to try to prove something, right? So I have leg locks. If I go to a gym where I know this team doesn't do leg locks, I have a choice. I can try to leg lock them to be like, leg locks are great. And that's going to be something that I would do if we're in a competition class and people want me to help out by like, let's show what could happen if a leg locker, if I have to face leg locker, especially if I'm visiting a friend who's competing and they're going to face leg locker, I'm helping them by showing that part of my game. But if I'm trying to make me better, I want to try to have a match where they're the best. If this gym is known for amazing wrestling, I'm going to stand up with them. I want to feel that amazing wrestling. If this gym, on the other hand, are leg lockers, I'm going to try to leg lock with the leg lockers, even though like I'm a leg locker, but there's levels to this game. There's leg lockers way better than me, or whatever it is, whether it be judo or guard passing. Oh, this gym's great at guard passing. I want to pull guard. Let's feel that world-class guard passing this gym is known for. Every gym is known for something. And I think you're going to get the most out of it by trying to funnel the match, the opposite thing that you would do in a tournament, right? In a tournament, you want to keep them from their best stuff. But I think if you're visiting a gym and you're really trying to get the most out of it, like play the game in their strength and see what happens. And then even if you lose, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was even possible. But you would never get that, right? If you want to learn about wrestling and you pull guard every time versus the wrestlers, which is fine, like I said. This is if you are an advanced player who's focused on growth. If you're focused on safety, right? If you're a Masters 4 competitor and you're in a gym that's full of wrestlers that are 22, yeah, pull guard. Probably wise for your long-term health and safety. But if you're in a place where you really want to grow, like dive into their strength, and I really think that's going to take you further.
Off air, we were talking about how one of the ways that you've been able to keep connection to the jiu-jitsu community while being back home in Florida, you put on your first tournament in a long time. Let's talk about that, man. What rules did you go with? How was the turnout?
Oh, man.
Yeah, tell us about it.
That was an experience. I think I learned something that I was like, we'll start with the first question. So the rule set I ended up doing was, I guess I used Grappling Industries as my guide for the rules, because Grappling Industries is not quite IBJJF rules, but it's not quite Naga rules either, which I think like Naga tends to have the most permissive rule set. Whereas Grappling Industries is somewhere in the middle. You can do leg locks a little bit earlier, but we're not letting beginners heel hook each other either. But it was a points-based tournament because I was asking around before I was doing it, and I had lots of like unique and novel ideas, and I'm like, I was actually a replacement promoter. I wasn't supposed to be doing this. The organization had someone else doing it. They ended up being unable to do it for whatever reason, and then I was in as a replacement. I only had 2.5 months to promote the whole thing. And I was like, if I'm going to do an entirely new and special rule set, this is kind of short notice to convince people to show up to this new weird thing. If I'm going to do something new and weird, I think I wanted a longer lead time to like get. So I was like, I want to get people in. I got lucky that it's called the Battle of the Martial Arts. The karate, it was a karate veteran who had been doing martial arts since the 70s and 80s, and he was around during kind of that golden era of karate. And he realized a lot of his kind of teachers, mentors, and friends were now older and starting to pass away. And he wanted to use this tournament as a way to kind of reinvigorate the karate scene by putting on a big cash prize. He had $40,000 worth of prizes for the karate guys, and he was doing all of that. And he brought out the legends, some legends of the karate scene to be at his event. And it was a beautiful thing he was doing. And then someone was talking, it was like, hey, you should have a grappling event. And that's kind of where I came in. So he funded $6,000 for prize money. So I made 6 divisions, over 170, under 170 in gi and no gi for men, and then fully absolute for women. In gi and no gi, so that was 6 divisions, each getting $1,000 prize. And that was the focus of the adult division. And then I did regular kids divisions with restrictive rules so the kids didn't hurt themselves. And so that was the rule set decided. I promoted my best. I got really lucky. We had some really high level competitors that actually ended up signing up. We had Leilani Bernales and Alex Enriquez, both ADCC veterans who showed up. So that's pretty cool. But like the first tournament I put on in 10 years, I got ADCC veterans. On the men's side, we had Martin Corvetto. We had Jake Strauss, who ended up winning the lightweight. And then Alex obviously won the women's division. But we also had Eric Aliquin, who showed up. So we had some veteran, like some high quality competitors. And for our first time, it went really well. I was very happy with the turnout, considering the short amount of time. It could have been bigger, of course, but like I was just happy with how the event went. We had a long rules meeting. Everybody showed up. Everyone fought hard. And I really forgot like how much I enjoyed the chaos of putting on a tournament, because the first day was the kids, and like kids are always harder because their parents and the passion and their children, and they cry. Like it's just part of the nature with kids. But I actually really, really enjoyed the entire thing. And I got lucky that I asked around South Florida to get some referees, and I had some quality referees that came out and helped me out. So yeah, I think even though I'm not in South Florida anymore, I was born in South Florida, and like my connections to the South Florida scene were valuable in being able to have the event go pretty well. We're going to be having another one at the end of this year. They're going to do another karate one. I'm still talking to see if we're going to get part 2 of jiu-jitsu, but I was really happy to have the opportunity. I'm looking into possibly hosting some more tournaments. It's on my radar. I refereed a tournament for Leleo Code, which is one of the local scenes here, and like I think I'm just crazy. Like it was the biggest one they've ever had, and so we had double the amount of kids we usually have. And like everybody else was like, oh, that was too much. I was like, I left that tournament like on cloud 9. Like I was running around like a madman for 6 hours straight, refereeing and moving kids and moving them around. And like, I don't know why, I just loved it. I realized I was like, wow, I miss this chaos. Cause like I'm mostly teaching jiu-jitsu for an hour, maybe 3 hours for a seminar, but it's very calm. Like I'm the one leading it. Everyone here chose to come here to see me teach. And so I don't really have really many problems. It's very convenient. But like all the little fires that happen running a tournament, I don't know why. It really like lit a fire inside me of like, maybe I want more of this madness in my life. I don't know why, but I liked it a lot. So it went really well.
That's great. Well, I'm really happy to hear that, man. You know, I always have a tremendous amount of respect for people that put on and run tournaments, because that is a really difficult task. I have several friends that have started tournaments and things like that. I've refereed myself many times. Talk to me about some of the challenges and struggles that the competitors may not be aware of when it comes to managing and running tournaments. Like, what are some things you wish competitors and parents of kids who compete too, some things you wish they understood about what you do?
And I'm really new at it. I would like I said, I have put on 2 tournaments. I put on one tournament like 12 years ago and another one last year. But this is just even for me as someone who's a smaller promoter. I can't even imagine what Craig Jones who put on CJI, Mojasim, and the people who put on the massive events. I can't even imagine the amount of extra logistics they have. But even just me putting on a smaller event, like the fact that the venue will often have times where you have to be out of there no matter what. And so I know that it hurts as a competitor if you don't show up to your gym and your ring and you get disqualified. But if we had to wait on every single person, then the event wouldn't end. And then everyone has to stay here all day. And sometimes the venue will literally just shut the lights off on you. So I was very afraid of that happening. So I made sure everything's kind of run as smoothly as possible. The fact that The softwares are great. Like Smooth Comp is great. It's very good and convenient, but not everyone knows how to use it. And the learning curve, once you know how to use it, I think Smooth Comp is great, but the learning curve isn't always instant. And so like I've done tournaments where it's just the old school with pieces of paper and brackets, and I've done tournaments that use Smooth Comp, and I've done things that are mixed in between. Maybe you have people registering online, but we do paper here, or people registering in person. And so like there's just the logistics of getting it done is very hard. The fact that once you have more than one referee, once you have an actual tournament where you have 2 rings, 10 rings, however many rings, it's never going to be perfect. Bad calls are going to happen. But one thing that I noticed that made things run smoothly is everyone has to be on the same page, which is why I think please come to the rules meeting. A lot of people skip the rules meeting because they're like, I know the rules. But the rules meeting will tell you the spirit of this event, right? Because there's the rules, but then there's kind of the spirit behind the rules. When I did the rules meeting for the children's tournament this past Saturday, the first thing I said is like, your child's safety is the number one priority of this event, period. I will stop a match and have all the referees stop a match if your child is in any danger. Could they have gotten out of that armbar? Absolutely. Guess what? They're 7. We're not letting them try. Once their arm goes straight, it's over.
That's
because
awesome.
safety is the number one priority of a children's tournament, and in my opinion, I think should be for a children's tournament. That all flips on its head when I did the tournament where this match, right, there's a finals match for $1,000 between 2 grown men who are, they're not children, they're adults. They made a decision that they're going to put their life and limb on the line to win $1,000. So guess what? If someone's in a heel hook and they're not tapping, like I'm not going to save them because maybe they could have gotten out. Now, I think there's a line, right? The referee, I don't think should let the person fully rip the leg off, right? But we've all seen the horror videos where you hear the gunshot noise as someone gets their leg popped. The referee, I think at that point can stop the match, right? Like we all know your leg broke. Like this is jiu-jitsu. The point of jiu-jitsu is to be technical enough to win the game or strong enough to win the game because physicality is part of it, but it's not who is able to fight with a broken leg. That's not what we're trying to measure in jiu-jitsu. MMA, maybe it is, right? Some MMA divisions, they'll let you keep going with injuries like that. But even MMA will stop them, right? There's the classic old thing where, Tim Sylvia had his arm broken and was just hanging there and he wanted to fight. Guess what? Even the UFC said, no, bro, you're done. We're not letting you fight with a limp, hangy, broken arm. We're not letting that happen. So I think that understanding where the line is, and so that everyone at the beginning knows, hey, we're gonna be making safety a priority. You're at a tournament with no cash prizes, even as an adult, and they're gonna say, hey, this is a tournament for fun. This is for experience. We're gonna save you. And then your arm gets straightened out and they stop the match. Well, don't let your arm get straightened out. Same thing where like in the case of chokes, like usually we're going to let it go pretty far because going to sleep isn't seen as serious as letting limbs break. But a tournament might decide we're not letting you go to sleep. And that all is going to be said in the rules meeting. I really think that the rules meeting is underutilized. I think as promoters, we have to make sure that the referee and the promoter is always on the same page and there will be contention. But I think that just understanding that there's the intention of the event and then there's the actuality. Bad calls are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. And as long as the person putting on the event stays consistent with what they said the purpose was, right? If we say that, hey, like ADCC decided we're going to find out who's going to win. You guys all said you don't care about your safety. So you're going to have a match keep going on concrete. Go. You signing up and you know that. So if you get slammed on concrete at an ADCC event and you get injured, you signed up to go to ADCC. You knew that they have the matches keep going outside of the ring. You know that everyone is some people are starting to game the system and purposely push the match out of the ring to have a fight on the concrete or the thing. That's what you signed up for. So you can't be mad when your opponent does that to you because it's within the rules. I think just understanding that it's never going to be perfect. There will always be things that are off. And the last thing would be, and this is something that I learned as a competitor and as a promoter, I try my best. I've done a small amount of tournaments to not let corruption be a thing. And there are certain leagues that have a reputation where they say that, hey, we think that people are favoring certain teams or certain nationalities. All right. If that's how you feel, you have 2 choices. You can be that much better than everyone and submit everyone, and it doesn't matter. Or you can not compete in this league. If you believe that this league says that someone is going to win versus you, even if they shouldn't deserve it or if it's close, well, then you have to be so good that it's not close, or decide that you're going to go take your ball and play elsewhere where you think it's not corrupt. And then you vote with your feet. But if you're going to keep choosing to go to a place where you feel like these people keep cheating me, well, you're asking for it at a certain point. The first time you're allowed to complain and cry. It's my first time. I didn't know. Fine. But if you keep going back and keep complaining, and the league has no reason really to change for you, the league has its priorities. And the priorities usually at base is to stay in existence. And so they have to sell tickets. They have to keep the lights on. And then the next is going to be, whether it be, like I said, for the kids tournament, it's safety. For ADCC, it's we want to be tough guys. We want to fight to the death. That's what it is for ADCC. For IBJJF, I think they are very big on prestige. They like things to be very clean and organized and official and run on time. Those are what they go for. Like every single league you're going to go to that has any amount of time behind it has a reputation. If you're trusting a new league, that league usually is going to be trying to do something. It could just be our little town doesn't have a tournament. We want to put on a tournament, right? If you're doing that, we'll understand that's what it is, right? Like it's not going to be as organized as a bigger show because it's a mom and pop show done in a small town. And so if you set your expectations in line with what it is that and where you are, I think you'll just be a lot happier. I think a lot of people go to a tournament that they looked at the right website and they're like, wow, 400 people signed up for this tournament. And then you look at the venue and you're like, oh, this venue they only have 4 mats going. I'm going to be here all day. Make peace with it. You know that's what it is. Or ask for a refund. Versus if you see a tournament like, wow, only 50 people are signed up for this tournament. Okay, I'm not going to get many matches. I think it's just a matter of just informing yourself. It's like, that's how it keeps me sane as a competitor when I've competed, and it kept me sane as a promoter, like trying my best. To me, the hardest part about doing the promotion is getting people to show up. People didn't show up for our event because we were a new venue, and people were like, they're not really going to pay the $1,000 because they never heard of us. And it's not unforetold in jiu-jitsu to have people advertise prizes and not pay them. So I understood that, of course, people aren't going to believe me because there's no reputation of us actually paying people. So I understand. Now we've paid people the first year. That gives us credibility that the 3 champions that won both divisions all are going to be like, yeah, he paid. The event paid. So now next year, they pay their athletes. But as simple as that. Same thing with the referees we worked with. We paid all of our referees and we paid our scorekeepers. So now the people who want to work, hey, I worked with them. Like, yeah, they paid us appropriately and in a reasonable amount of time. So like I think everything becomes reputation at a certain point. But I think I've rambled a bit long on this.
No, that was all outstanding, man. Really, really good points. Speaking of the pay, so I mean that's really cool that you were able to offer $1,000 cash prizes for these divisions. Let's talk about that, man. How does the logistics of offering cash prizes work? Is that something that you do out of pocket? Do you leverage sponsors?
So
how'd that work?
Different for every venue. I was very lucky that the $6,000 was sponsored by, like I said, I wasn't really my own tournament. I was a subset of this massive karate tournament that was going on. And so they wanted to have a grappling division. So they gave the funds for the payout. And I think that, especially if you're trying to evaluate tournaments as to whether or not you're worried about not getting paid, knowing where the money comes from. I think most places pay the fees out of a sponsorship. I think it's the safest way. If you're trying to pay your athletes out of the door, it's very risky because you don't know, right? And that's part of why I think some events get canceled, right? Or what they'll do sometimes, I know that I know New Breed does this, where their absolutes are only paid if they have a certain number of people in it. So they're directly paying the cash prize out of the people who signed up for it. So I'm signing up for this absolute, but if I look online and I don't see 4 people in the division, I'm not getting paid. And so I know that when I'm going in, I know that this is not for money unless a certain number of people sign up. And there's another one, I think it's World Series of Jiu-Jitsu, that does something similar like that, where like everything is paid, but everything is directly related to how many people sign up. So they're paying people based on the entrance fees. I've heard of other ones that do bet matches where it's literally your entrance fee versus your opponent's entrance fee. And that league is not trying to make any money. That league is like, all the money's going back to you guys. There's other ones where they're trying to make money. And so not every jiu-jitsu, just same with not every jiu-jitsu gym is trying to make money. Lots of jiu-jitsu gyms are passion projects, right? I don't know the stats, but I'd say there's a percentage that are passion projects and there's a percentage that are actually paying the owner or the coaches or both bills. And understanding the difference, same thing with tournaments. Some tournaments are passion projects or tax write-offs where like they want the tournament to lose money because they want the tax write-off, right? And so like there's a bunch of different ways of winning. Ours, I got really lucky that the sponsors of the karate tournament passed us some money. In the past, my first tournament, I had a day job back then, and I just paid out of my pocket. I was in a financial situation with my day job that I could put aside. I think I gave a $500 cash prize, the absolute, and that was just out of my bank account. That I just paid it myself. And I think when there are lower cash prizes like $100, $200, stuff like that, that's probably out of someone's bank account. When you see these crazy cash prizes like $100,000, $1 million, those, in my opinion, those got to be sponsors. I don't believe that kind of money is usually going to be made by your gate or your athlete attendance. That's just my guess. Like I said, I've only put on tiny events. I've never put on anything giant. And whenever I've worked for larger events, they don't tell the referees all these types of details. I just am told when to show up, what the rules are, the rules meeting, and I just referee my rings. So that's just been my experience.
That's great, man. Well, let me ask you this. How significant do you think offering a cash prize is for a new tournament as far as attracting athletes? Like, do you feel like you would have gotten the same level of athletes, those ADCC veterans that showed up, if you weren't offering $1,000 to win?
In the case of like Alex, like, cause she had to fly in from Georgia, I don't think it would have been worth her while, right? Because of the caliber of athlete. Leilani lives down there. Maybe she would have showed up. I don't know if she would have showed up without a cash prize, because I think there's a certain level that athletes get to where they have to kind of look at their schedule. And because jiu-jitsu is so beautifully popular right now, there are options every weekend, right? Like back in the day, you were lucky if there was an event every month. Now there's more than one every weekend. And sometimes there's more than one the same day and multiple. There could be a situation, if Fight to Win is in your town, there might be a tournament on Friday, a different one on Saturday, and a different one on Sunday in the same weekend, in the same town.
Yeah.
So like with that, well then as an athlete, what am I going to choose? If there's a choice, this tournament wants to pay me and this tournament doesn't, I'm probably going to go with the one that pays me if money is an object for me. I think everyone's in a bunch of different situations. I think the athletes that are trying to make jiu-jitsu pay the bills, absolutely. But there are also some high-level athletes who have day jobs. And like jiu-jitsu is not paying the bills. Jiu-jitsu is still for fun. It's the kind of the cool thing about jiu-jitsu that there's some world-class jiu-jitsu people who have really lucrative other careers that pay their bills. And so they'll show up to a random tournament, right? For fun, right? Like there's definitely been situations where world-class people will just show up to a local tournament, like a Grappling Industries or a Naga or a New Breed or a AGF, etc. Like that'll happen occasionally. But I think that we wouldn't have gotten, I think, the same level of athlete, especially with it being our first event, because we don't have a reputation. I think once you have a reputation, you can shy away from that. But also there are other tournaments, I think, that don't give cash prizes, that they get away with it being maybe a lower entrance fee, right? Maybe instead of it being, most people expect to pay $80, $100 to go compete these days. Maybe more for a more prestigious tournament like Abu Dhabi World Pro or IBJJF or even ADCC, right? All of those have higher entrance fees. But if you put on like a little local, like blue belt only tournament for like $30 with no cash prize, you'll get lots of people because they want experience. It's just, what are you offering? But I think you also have to change the rule set. When there's money on the line, then single elimination is fine, because people are like, I understand, I'm trying to win money. We're just trying to get through this thing. But if you're trying to get experience, then and you have a round robin rule set or a double elimination, like, oh, I can go and pay $50 or even $60, and I'm guaranteed 2 matches, I'm guaranteed 4 matches, then suddenly it becomes about experience. And I think it's all about, what are you giving? And I think that oftentimes having more fun or just competition experience being what you're getting out of it is still very, very attractive. I think that's only when you get to the top level of competitors that the cash is really important. I don't think that for your average purple and below non-world level competitor, that whether or not there's a $50 or $100 prize really matters to them. It's definitely going to entice people, but I know there's lots of promotions all over Florida right now that don't have a cash prize for the majority of their divisions, and they still have people showing up. It's kind of an interesting thing where there's almost a divide. There are people who love super fights because even though you're not getting as many matches, you get that flyer, that picture of your face, so-and-so going, and it's cool to post on your Instagram. It's like, yeah, you have a super fight? That's so cool, man. When is it? I want to watch the stream. Like, that's value. The value of the spectacle, I think, is something that a lot of people like. On the other hand, there are other people who don't like it. Like, if you give me a choice between super fight or bracket, I want a bracket every time. Because for me, I guess maybe it's always been, I like the variety and the quantity of jiu-jitsu. So to me, it's like, oh, if I win, I get to face another person. That's exciting to me. Or even better, round robin, I get to face everyone no matter what. Versus if I go to a super fight, even if I win, that's it. I just get one person. So for me, I'm not going to really want to do a super fight unless the person is really interesting or I'm getting some kind of cash prize out of it. But I'll totally do a bracket for fun because to me, my love of jiu-jitsu is open mat. And a bracket or a round robin is way closer to open mat than a super fight. But that's me. There's other people who are super fight lovers or super fights in a cage. Another cool thing. Oh my gosh, I get to have a grappling match in a cage. It's cool. I think that the cool element cannot be underestimated.
No, I really appreciate your insight on this because, like we said, jiu-jitsu has grown so much, and like you said, there's tournaments every weekend now. This is something that's not the norm and not how it's traditionally been. So I'm always curious, like with new people out there that want to start new tournaments and become promoters themselves. This is valuable information to know whether or not they really need a cash prize because cash prizes are becoming more and more prevalent. And there's probably a lot of people out there who are, aspiring promoters wondering like, man, do I need to have a lump of cash here before I kick off a tournament to have success? So it's nice to know that you don't necessarily need it, but it can help for sure.
I don't think but I also think figuring out what your lane is. So the cool thing that I noticed recently. So in Florida, there's a guy named Josh LeDuc who he's a Zapatero. He puts all those on.
Josh is great. Yeah.
He's made almost his entire business on small, either a couple of brackets or super fights. Like almost everything in his, it's to feel like EBI or back in the day, Metamoris. It's that feeling of like we're running one match at a time and everyone's watching and there might be a stream and there's commentators. It's spectacle, right? And he's been doing that for years and years and years. He also, I think, affiliated with the catch wrestling guys and put on the catch wrestling world championship a few years back. And I think he's doing that again. He's having it's interesting that he chose to have an open tournament, but I guess kind of understanding like what he likes doing. The open tournament isn't being run by him. He's having a guy named Ross Kellen who puts on, there's a league called Copa here in Florida, and he puts on the Copa tournaments. And Josh, even though Josh has been putting on tournaments for a long time, chose to not put on the open tournament, chose to let Ross put on the open, and then he puts on the final show that has the catch wrestling world championships and the super fights and all that. Kind of like the division between how you run an open tournament and how you run like a big show. And that was the interesting thing. It was like he could have tried to put on that tournament, but he didn't. And that was really fascinating to me seeing that. They haven't happened yet. The catch wrestling world championship, I think, is coming up soon. But it was a fascinating thing to make me realize like, oh, because I think about the big cash prizes that I was offering, right? Effectively, I was offering 6 divisions, right? 6 divisions that have a big cash prize. That's way closer to a CJI or a show than it is to a big open tournament. Whereas I did also have an open tournament where I had the regular divisions. And what did I notice? Oh, well, the people who wanted to come, the professionals, the killers, they all jumped on. But it didn't actually help me get many more people for the regular open because those aren't the same set of people. The people who show up for the open and just want to have the hobbyist experience are not the same people that look at $1,000 event and are like, I can win that. They're not necessarily the same people. And that understanding that like it kind of takes a different skill set to put those two things on. I tried to put both on at the same time in my first event, and I was like, oh, because same thing with kids. There are some kids that are professionals, but almost every kids tournament is a let's have fun, let's have experience, let's stay safe vibe, right? Whereas the vibe for the $1,000 prize with a lot of things. And I think actually, ironically, Alex and Leilani actually, even though they were one of the things I loved that was really unique about them, they both had matches for $1,000. They had really good matches. After the tournament was over, they chose to have fun rolls with each other. Something that no one else at the tournament did. I opened the mat up and said, there should be open mat right now. I always wanted open mat to be tournaments. I always felt it was a big waste. All of us jiu-jitsu people here in the same room, some of us only got one match. There's all these mats empty towards the end of a tournament, and no one's rolling on them. And I was like, and so at the end of the tournament, we had an open mat, and I welcomed it open to everybody to come train. A couple people rolled, and some random people who happened to be at the tournament who weren't competing ended up coming and rolling as well. But Alex and Leilani rolled. And like, just like they had a friendly, fun, like competitive roll with each other because they both have bigger events coming up in the future they want to prepare for. And it was such a positive thing. I was like, that's so beautiful. Whereas no one else did that. And I've never seen that before at a tournament. And so it was really interesting. It's for me, that's the jiu-jitsu that I love. I've made a lot of friends in the past at tournaments. Some of my best friends in Florida are people I met because we competed against each other. And then I was like, I want to roll with that guy again. And I went over to the gym and like, I didn't come to dojo storming, but I was like, hey, do you want to roll again? You had an interesting game. You messed me up. I want to try again. And so I thought that was really, really cool.
That is cool, man. That is an awesome idea, having a big open mat after tournaments. That's something I don't see. Yeah, come to think about it, I don't think I've seen anyone do that. So it's
and so I tried to have it be a big open mat. It turned out to be a tiny open mat, but it's something that I want to keep as an idea for events I do in the future. The idea of having that open mat.
There's all different avenues in jiu-jitsu that people can do. They can be competitors, they can open schools, they can be promoters. So for the people out there listening that might want to cross over into being a promoter, this is all great information, man. Charles, man, we've reached about the halfway point of the show. You've done this before. This is where I always play a game with my guests. It's a game called the pummel. The pummel's a series of random questions. Some of these are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But if you'd like to run through the pummel with me again, I'd love to play this game with you.
Let's do it.
All right, man. I've got a couple new questions that I've added since you've been on. So this will be cool. What's the largest animal you think that you could defeat in hand-to-hand combat?
Oh, man.
Just a heads up. This is one of the most scrutinized questions. Everyone is always very like, oh man, there's no way this guy could have beaten a dragon, or
a dragon.
Yeah. So like, so think deeply, be honest, but think deeply.
Man.
If you had to be locked into a cage with an animal, what's the biggest, most ferocious animal you think you could beat?
Okay, so we're in a cage and there's no weapons of any kind, right?
No weapons of any kind, just you and your jiu-jitsu against Mother Nature.
Oh my gosh. I would say I'm pretty conservative with my thoughts on this. I would imagine maybe I think it would be something that is large but is not accustomed to being one-on-one, right?
Okay,
so like
cool.
So like I thought my first thought was like a hyena, because hyenas, though they're obviously vicious and dangerous, they're pack animals. They're not very good at fighting by themselves. Right? They're not so like a lion or a leopard or something. Like I guess lions do hunt in packs as well, but like I feel like a lion is gonna mess me up way worse than a hyena. And so like I as much as like there's the whole thing, yeah, you just choked the lion. It's called Mata Leon for a reason.
Yeah.
Fine, but
go try it. Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna work out well for me. And even if the only problem with like a hyena is like they're so dirty and have so many diseases. I think even if I win, I lose by some bloodborne infection that I'm gonna get from being scratched up.
Hyenas are also pretty big. Have you seen a picture of a hyena compared to a person?
I have not actually.
So
I just know the pictures of them next to lions and have like a general idea how big lions are. They're usually smaller than lions.
Yes,
so that's 100%. Kind of what I'm going off of.
100%. I saw a picture. It's funny you said hyena, because I saw a picture recently of these drug dealers in South Africa that have hyenas on a chain.
I take that back. I have seen those. Those are way bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
In my head, I had the animated hyenas from Lion King. I'm like, that get messed up. mess those goofy hyenas up. But I remember that video you're talking about now where they look terrifying on those chains.
If you ever
But
seen those big cane corso dogs, they're like bigger than that even. So
yeah.
I didn't know that either until I saw that. This was only like a couple weeks ago I saw that picture. So
My only thought, so here's my reasoning behind it, right? It's that I'm thinking about like I used to play with a pit bull a lot. I had I was, and so I felt like, and also like, if you've ever like owned a dog, like the amount of problems they have with their hips and their shoulders, like
yes.
they're very poorly designed animals when it comes to their hips and shoulders. Like that stuff slips out like all the time.
Yeah.
And so like they're mostly head, right? They're mostly head and torso. Their limbs are super weak. And as a jiu-jitsu person, like we isolate and break limbs of humans. Human limbs are way bigger than dog limbs. Even, I'm pretty sure even that hyena, it's probably, I think of it like a dog, is mostly head and neck
Yes.
and like chest. Its paws aren't very strong. And so I figured that like there's actually it's so funny. Like my logic is all from like scenes I've seen in like movies and animation. My first thought was like I could beat up those hyenas from Lion King. That was my first thought. And then my second thought is like there's a video of, I think it's in like one of the King Kong movies where King Kong is fighting some sort of like dogs, and he's like tearing the legs off of the dogs. And so like in my head I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could like damage a dog's leg and then strangle it. That's my thought. But like I don't even know if any of that's real. I'm so much of a I just think that tactically I could probably do that because they only have one real weapon, right? It's just really their head and their mouth. They're not like, whereas you think of cats. Cats have claws that are going to scratch and claw, and like grizzly bears have claws. Dogs have nails, but dogs don't swat. So I think because there's just one main weapon to worry about, which is just the mouth, I feel like it puts it in a manageable scenario tactically, that this is going to be a better chance of survival versus any of the animals that can slash and claw and mess me up. That being said, I am from Florida, and gator wrestling is a sport, right? Like it's a sport and people are really good at it. And so I don't know if an alligator is bigger than a hyena. But I think that considering that those dudes at the carnival and like those dudes in like Louisiana and in the bayou, like they wrestle alligators on the regular and they're fine. So like, I'm pretty sure if they can do it, like I got a lot of years of jiu-jitsu and like I know alligators from living in Florida my whole life. I've never wrestled a gator, even though I'm old enough that like you were still allowed to do that when I was a kid, where like you could show up and they'd be like, you want to wrestle this baby gator? And like, you could say yes. I didn't have the guts to do it as a kid. I was like, nah, it's all right, sir. I think I'll just watch. Because like, that is like the epitome of a Florida field trip. I don't
I was
know
gonna
if it's
say
anymore.
Florida's wild.
When I was a kid, almost every kid in South Florida, that was a field trip. Almost every kid I knew got a field trip to the Seminole Indian reservation. And one of the things going on there at the reservation at like this quasi carnival was alligator wrestling. And we all watched. And then afterwards we got to eat fried alligator, which is delicious, by the way. It tastes like, so you know how like shrimp and lobster taste similar, but lobster's a little bit more buttery. It's like gator is to chicken what lobster is to shrimp. Buttery chicken.
Yeah, that's a very good description. I had that for the first time a couple of years ago. I drove through Louisiana and I stopped at like a really popular Cajun spot and I had it and I never had it before.
It's delicious.
It is delicious. I had it with like Tabasco sauce all over it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And for me, it was kind of like a cross between chicken and frog legs.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't know if many people would have the frog legs reference. Exactly. Yeah. You're right about that with the frog legs reference. It's just, I feel like if you haven't had gator, you probably haven't had frog legs unless you're French or into kind of high cuisine. But yeah. Ironically, my family's from Jamaica. My mom loved frog legs. So like I had a unique childhood where like at a young age, I tried frog legs because my mom was like, oh my gosh, we have frog legs. And I was like, cool. And then like 2 years later in middle school, we're dissecting one of these. It's like, I have eaten you.
It's like, oh, it's a nice thigh. I could fry that right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably it would not be, yeah.
Yeah. No, the gator thing's interesting, man. Yeah. Cause gators have like kind of a biological disadvantage though, where I think if you get behind and on top of them, and then also I think I could be completely wrong about this, but I think that I read that the pressure to shut their mouth is much easier than the pressure to open their mouth. So if they clamp on something,
it's really interesting. So to bring this back to jiu-jitsu, as I always do, it's really similar to us. So if you this is weird, but hold on a second. Your leg, right? How many times in guard, if someone's leg is out here like this, it's actually really strong. So shutting a gator's mouth while it's this far open is really hard.
yes,
But just like you in jiu-jitsu, have you ever had someone bind your leg in butterfly guard with your heel on your butt? That's a lot like a gator's mouth. Once your heel is on your butt, you have like no strength to open it back up. Gator's mouth is the exact same way. It's like I always that was actually a image I have in my head whenever I'm binding someone in jiu-jitsu is just like the gator's mouth. If you keep it closed, it can't open. But once it's open, you're not going to really have an easy time closing it when it's wide open like that. It's pretty strong in that position. But its biting pressure is crazy stronger than its opening pressure. You're exactly right. And so I think as a Floridian, I think it's a great answer. I'm going to go with a large alligator, even though I'm pretty sure that I have not had the training of wrestling alligators. I know there's a lot of dudes who have it. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say, based on my childhood memories of watching gator wrestling, that I'm going to go after the gator. I think it's a very appropriate answer for me as a Floridian.
I think it's realistic. I think that's more realistic. There's a guy I follow on Instagram. His name is Blue Collar Brawler. Have you seen this guy before?
Yeah. I have seen that guy.
Oh, man. It's unbunbelievable how easy he makes it look.
Wildlife services. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How easy it is for him to just tie up these gators. Some of them are pretty big. So
yeah.
I think that's a real
man.
I think that's a realistic answer, though, for sure. Now, here's another new question for you. If you found a genie lamp and normal genie rules apply, so no wishing for more wishes and no killing people, what 3 wishes would you choose?
Oh, jeez. Man, that's a hard one. Oh, actually, I have, I'm gonna, so I'm gonna use one of my answers. So this is usually my answer to the, what mutant power would you have? But I would use one of my wishes for this. So the mutant power I always wanted is what I would get with my first wish, which is that I wanted to be able to heal any injury in 2 weeks. It's very specific. I don't want to be able to heal anything instantly because then you live forever. And every examination of living forever that I've ever seen always ends up horribly. And so like, I want to be able to still have the risk of life, right? So like I can still like die if I fall out of an airplane or off a cliff or anything completely stupid. But like if I mangle myself horribly doing jiu-jitsu or doing like extreme sports or anything, as long as I'm still like my pulse is still there, I can still kind of pull myself back together in 2 weeks. So like as long as the thing would kill me in 2 weeks and 1 day, I'll be able to make a full recovery. That would be my superpower. But if it would kill me in less than 2 weeks, which means that I can still die, right? If I'm going to get old, most of those diseases, there's things that can kill you in less than 2 weeks. So I think about the long term of this, where like if I'm living too long, especially we're in a modern time where like I have a social security number, like I don't want to have to fake my death and come back as my nephew or something. I don't want to have to do that. And so like I want to still die at a like reasonable age. Like I'm cool living to be like 90 or 100 or something. Or like if we all become cyborgs, I can jump on that with the rest of humanity and live to be like 150. But I don't want to live forever. But I want to be able to have like a huge health span where I can do all kinds of fun stuff. Like I thought about this. All the other stuff, like it makes you too OP to have fun, right? Like if I was truly invincible, then all the things I love become really fucking boring.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like if I've got unbreakable bones, well then what's the point of jiu-jitsu? If I can't be knocked unconscious, what's the point of kickboxing now? Like I don't have to defend myself. I can just like, it's like having the cheat code in a video game. You think you want it, and then you realize the video game is not fun anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so like that would be my thing. Like, and that's one. I gotta have 2 more though. Honestly, I think that's all I really want for me. So I think the other one would be, I think I would want the ability to communicate in a way where anyone listening to me would be forced to like listen to like logic and reason. I feel like there's like a lot of like disingenuous communication that happens like in our society where people can kind of like pretend that they're really following along and talking to you, but they're just kind of bullshitting you. So I guess like the ability to like be so skilled at communication that I can elicit genuine communication and response from the people that I talk to. Versus like, because I tend to like, I definitely lean on the side of like seeing the best in people and trusting them and like wanting everything to be great and wanting to be like, no, but they said this, they would never. Oh, they did. Shit. It allows, because like I still live my life like that's true. I tend to give a lot of people like a really, like, I want people to be able to reform and get better. I want people to, I really do think, because I've met lots of people who have checkered past, and like I've seen people turn their lives around. I've seen people be able to take a bad situation and like decide they're not going to do that anymore and like become like a real force for good in the world. And so like I think if I was able to communicate in a way where I would be able to help people discern the difference between people who have good intentions and people who have bad intentions, I think I could do a lot of good. I think that could be really valuable. And lastly, I guess, I don't know if I need a genie for this, but a genie would definitely help. I guess be in a situation where I would be able to completely divorce the things that I want to do in the world from my own monetary compensation. So like right now, I love teaching jiu-jitsu. I would teach jiu-jitsu for free. When I had a day job, I practically did teach jiu-jitsu for free. But because I had a day job, I never had the time to teach jiu-jitsu as often as I want. So like if I could be in a financial situation, which like it's like kind of a shitty wish, because like as I say it out loud, I'm like, well, then I should just do that myself. And I think it's within my power to do that myself, is to put myself in a situation where like I could just give it all away. Right. So like I meet people and I'm training with them and I want to help them. And I usually end up just helping them with their jiu-jitsu. It's like the nature of how I am. I always try to check myself because I'm like, not everyone wants your help, Charles. Be quiet. But like, if I roll with someone and they have a problem, like, hey, do you want my help or do you want me to leave you alone? And if they say, yes, they want my help. Hey, you're actually making this mistake. This could help you here. I think this path forward could help you. But I also realized in one of the gyms I used to train at that because I pretty much gave free private lessons to everyone, when I stopped having a day job and was like, hey, does anyone want private lessons? Everyone was like, the people who were like independently wealthy, they got private lessons. But anybody who had a budget was like, I can't really afford that. And I'm already getting it for free because of who you are, Charles. Like no one said it to me except like one person told me once that like it hurt really bad, but it was also like I had to realize it was true. They were really blunt with me one day. They're like, Charles, I love you, man, but like your business model doesn't make any sense. It's like you're trying to make money teaching jiu-jitsu lessons to people, but why would I ever pay you for, like, you literally give everyone free jiu-jitsu lessons after you roll with them. Everyone knows that all they got to do is ask you an interesting question. You're going to give them like an hour speech because you can't help yourself. And like, so why would they pay you? And like, it killed me. I remember that it hurt so bad. And I was just like, I don't want to hold back. I don't want to not help people who want my help, but I have to survive. I have to make money. And I got lucky enough. I figured out how to book seminars, and the BJJ Fanatics deal helped me a lot to be able to sell instructionals and make some income that way. So that helped me a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd make that my wish. Just like the ability to divorce my decision-making on earth from financial compensation. So I could just do everything that I do just because I want to and because it's helpful, versus having to stop myself and be like, I know that I want to like blather on for an hour and help this person for completely free, but I got bills. And so like right now I'm selling jiu-jitsu as part of my income. I kind of need to stop and be like, hey, like I know I did this, but are you available to pay me? And like, I hate it. Like I hate talking to people about money in jiu-jitsu. It's like my least favorite thing, because I know that if I got a day job again or like put myself in a financial situation where I didn't need that, I wouldn't charge people. Because like, why? I got lucky enough in my upbringing in martial arts and jiu-jitsu that like gym owners let me train for free when I couldn't afford it. And gym owners have let me, the classic mop the mats, all those ways that I was given. Like it always is hard for me if I have a student who physically can't afford it to be like, no jiu-jitsu for you. And so like, I guess that would be it. But like, even to me, it's still kind of like, wanting that as a wish to me psychologically says that like I've given up on being able to achieve it on my own. So, but that's I'm not going to introspect too long on this. This is supposed to be a fun question.
No, that was a great answer, man. I also do want to say, man, I think that I think people like you in the jiu-jitsu community are very valuable, man. So I understand your struggles with wanting to give information and then also needing to pay the bills, but I also think that your generosity is why you're well regarded in the community. So I just want to take a moment to say that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Of course, man. Let me ask you another question. I got two more for you. In all your travels that you've done, have you ever had a supernatural experience?
Supernatural, like aliens, or supernatural,
It could
like
be
spirits?
it could be aliens, spirits, ghosts, chupacabra, Bigfoot, whatever you got.
Let me think about this. I've definitely had moments that felt eerie, and moments that felt like powerful. I don't know. I don't know if I call it super. I don't know what it is. I guess I've had definitely some things that have happened to me that felt unexplainable. I can't, and because of like my way of viewing the world is like I refuse to attribute to the supernatural that which I don't understand. Right? Like, and so though I think there's situations that I think other people might consider supernatural, and they are, I guess the first one I can think of, it's twice. Once I was in Cambodia in what is it called? City is Phnom. The city is Siem Reap. It's those giant pyramids they have in Cambodia. Not the pyramid one. That pyramid, no. So I guess it's three of them. And I guess most of them, these three I'm thinking of, were all kind of in somewhat religious places. So one was in Angkor Wat in Cambodia. I think, yeah, Angkor Wat is, yeah, it's the big temple complex in Siem Reap in Cambodia. And I was there and we went to I like climbed and I walked around the place and I got to the temple and we were at the main one and there was monks doing their prayers and all that. And it was just so quiet. And I remember just kind of like feeling like an energy in the air. And I felt the same thing when I was in India and I went to this, I can't remember. I think it was in either there's two cities. I can't remember which one because my brain is melding travels together. It's either in Pushkar or in Delhi. I went to a really big mosque and the prayers were happening. And everyone was all together, like doing the evening prayers. And it was nighttime, and there's something about when large groups of people are chanting that, like, I can feel it in my chest. Like, I can feel the energy, like, almost like shaking in my chest. And like, it's very surreal. It's very, very powerful. I don't know what it is, but I've experienced it many times in my life when I've been around large groups of people in religious places that are all chanting the exact same thing. That like I've experienced the same thing in giant churches when there's like the Hail Mary is happening in some Catholic churches, like a big enough church with enough people saying the Hail Mary. I felt it. I don't know if it's something with the sound and the resonance of like that many voices all on the same frequency. I don't know if, it is a deity or God, or I don't know what it is, but it is something that I have noticed. There's a correspondence between when I've been in really holy religious places with massive amounts of people all setting their intention in one place, that there's something going on there. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. I was raised Episcopalian, so a denomination of Christian growing up, and I went to Catholic school, but like I've never been one to be like this group has it figured out. And so like I don't know. I don't know what it is, but like I think if you can go into a place where a large number of people are all setting their intention in one direction, even like a giant yoga retreat where everyone's meditating and alming together, same thing. Anytime a large group of people are all kind of in sync, emitting sound, has always been like, I feel it in my chest. And that's happened to me multiple times. That's probably the most supernatural thing I've experienced. I've experienced like eerie sensations in certain places. Like when I was in the the Mayan Riviera in Mexico, and crap, what is it called? It's Tulum. I think it's Tulum is the name of the
Yeah.
city.
Tulum. Yep.
Um, Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza was the name of the complex, and like they show you how beautifully they organize everything, and there's the clap and it echoes, and like it's brilliant, and like there's something about that place too. So like, yeah, those are definitely it's, and to me it's unexplainable. I can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you if it's God or spirits or aliens, but I've definitely felt something. And I guess the other one would be in I've been awestruck in places of nature. So like this past summer, Natasha and I went to visit our friend Tocha in the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands was like a small island chain halfway between, maybe not halfway, but between Denmark and Iceland. If you watch the anime Vinland Saga, in like the first 2 episodes, that's actually where they are in Vinland Saga when forgetting his name, the dude's dad is like taking them on a boat and they get ambushed. It's in the Faroe Islands. It's one of the most raw and naked, beautiful nature experiences I've ever had in my whole life. Iceland is amazing. I've been to Iceland as well. It's absolutely beautiful. Faroe Islands is very similar to Iceland. Less icebergs, but the nature and the mountains and the green are stunning. And because it's a less popular tourist destination, you can go places where there's just nobody. It's just you and the people you're with and just this vast expanse of nature. And it's so quiet unless you and your people talk, that it's breathtaking. And like same thing there. Like I would like feel something in my chest, like the awe of the silence and the gravity of nature. Yeah.
That's so cool, man. That's awesome. Well, I mean, obviously being able to travel to all the places that you have, you've been exposed to all different kinds of experiences. That's really awesome. A final question for you, Charles, on the pummel game here. What is the spiciest food you've ever eaten in your life?
Let me think.
You're a foodie who's traveled all over the world, so I thought this would be a good one for you.
Yeah, it's funny. The spiciest thing I ever had was before I started traveling. I was in Gainesville, Florida. I was still a software developer. One of my coworkers, I was at this point in time, I can't remember if I was a software developer at this point or if I was a scrum master. A scrum master is like the person in the software development team who kind of facilitates things, but I don't remember which one I was at this point in time. I might have been a developer, I might have been a scrum master. And one of the analysts on our team, his name was Jason. Jason was a hot sauce guy. And so Jason, every couple of weeks, would come in with a new hot sauce. And this particular week, and because he had one of those people who he can eat anything and just smile it off. This is when ghost chilies, I don't know if they first came out, but it's when they first came to my attention. So like the boot jolokia is the spiciest one I've ever heard of, like with Indian people, the boot jolokia pepper. And then the ghost chili came, and I think they've recently surpassed the ghost chili with the Carolina Reaper, I think. And the Carolina Reaper might be, I haven't kept up with hot ones or those things, but I think Carolina Reaper is the current top. But at this point in time, Carolina Reaper, I don't think it come out yet. It was the ghost chili. And he had ghost chili sauce. And he had a little dropper. And he would drop a couple drops in his mouth like nothing, smile, and be fine. And my family's from Jamaica. We do jerk. Like jerk chicken is spicy. It's legit. Yeah. And I enjoy Thai curries. I enjoy Indian curries. And so in my head, I was like, how bad could it be? You know, how bad could it be? And so he took his little dropper and he dropped it on my tongue, and it was hot for hours. Like it didn't go away. It was so hot. And like I've always, like, one of the cool things, like Jamaican jerk, usually if you get it in Jamaica, it'll be from a little like kind of dude on the side of the road or like by the airport or wherever you're getting it. Like you can get it in restaurants too, but like my favorite jerk I had when I was in Jamaica was just a dude who had a grill on the side of the road, and he gave you a little bit of jerk chicken or jerk pork and some hard dough bread. This is dense, sweet bread. And so even though the jerk burns your mouth, you have a bite of the bread, it kind of cools you back off, have a bite of the jerk. It's my favorite way of eating. It's like burning myself and then quenching the fire and then eating again. Same thing when I get Indian, like the raita, the yogurt sauce in Indian food. I'm going to burn my mouth. I'm going to have some raita and I'm going to burn my mouth again.
Yeah.
Well, I never had any of that stuff. This just at my office. All we had, I think, was like Girl Scout cookies or something, which did not help. God. And so I had like a drop of that. That is the spicy thing I've had. And that kind of turned me off of the competitive spicing thing. I'll eat spicy food if like it's a dish and like Indian spicy, Thai spicy, I'll do that. But I think America, we're number one in that regard. Like when it comes to like psychotically hot sauces, the American South and their love of the Carolina Reaper and the ghost chili. It's a if the chef needed hazmat suits to prepare my food, I don't want it. It's just too much for me.
Yeah, whenever they have to warn you about like touching your face or anything, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, this is
anytime that
probably,
warning comes, I'm
probably not a
like,
good idea. Yeah.
ah. But there's people who are used to it. Like my buddy Jason, he was fine. He ate it like a champ, and he's like, actually, this one, Charles, I'm sorry, this batch isn't that hot. And I'm like, you're crazy. This batch is I want to die right now. I don't know what you're talking about. So much love to Jason for scalding my mouth back in the day.
All right, Charles, that was the final question for the pummel game. Congratulations, you win again. You got your double underhooks. So, man, and before we go, I wanted to make sure that we plug your instructional you just filmed with us. You have an instructional called Compass Knee Bars. The knee bar is one of my favorite attacks in jiu-jitsu. It's one of my highest percentage, one of my go-to moves. So I'd love to break this down with you and pick your brain a little bit. What are some of your favorite ways to isolate the joint on the knee bar? How do you like to, what are some controls you like to use? What are the places you like to set it up? Talk me through your knee bar game in general.
So cool. So there's a bunch of different ways that I've gone after it over the years. Ironically, this system is the general overarching theme of the system isn't new. It was actually based on my brown belt game. My brown belt game was knee bar obsessed. Now, obviously, since I was a brown belt, that was 8 years ago now. I've been a black belt for 8 years. It's not the same exactly as it. I've obviously refined tactics, but I'd say the number one thing, there's a few things. So thing number one is understanding these various tools. So the first tool I think is separating the legs, because the most common thing people do is cross their ankles, right? And so I'm going to simulate a foot with my hand. So if we imagine that my fingers are my toes and my wrist is my ankle, what I find if I can grab the toes, or imagine this is my heel, or the heel, I can separate anybody's feet. If I grab the ankle, which is being simulated by my wrist, they can bring the power of their quad to bear, and I am never going to be strong enough to beat a quad with my hands. However, when I cross the wrist line, I now cause all the power they're trying to generate from their quad to get dampened in the wiggliness of their ankle. They can't, if you hold someone, it's like the taco grip that I teach. If you hold someone down below their ankle or grab anything below their ankle, they can't bring the power of their quad to bear because their ankle dampens it away. And the next thing is I will always grab both feet at the same time and make sure I'm keeping myself structurally strong. So when I separate feet, I'll never try to separate them in a motion where I have to cross my arms. I'm getting weak by doing that. I'll always make sure the way I'm going to pull, I'm going to make my right arm go right and my left arm go left, and I'll separate them like that. And I have a drill that I teach. It's on the instructional where you can do it from 50-50 or you can do it from there. You just have your partner cross their ankles as hard as they can, and you can grab their shins, grab whatever you want. It's very hard to do. But if you grab their feet, meaning either their toe line or their heel, you'll be able to separate every time. That's thing number one. Thing number two is always talk about I want to weaken the joint. This isn't just on knee bars. I do this on every joint lock. And so the two ways that I like to weaken the joint, I think at every joint, whether it be an elbow, a knee, an ankle, it has kind of this middle zone of like homeostasis where it's happy. Think about how your body works properly. It moves around as synovial fluid lubricating the joint. You've got probably, unless you've damaged yourself badly enough, you've got some ligaments in there cushioning it. It has a happy place. I can make it weak in two ways. Well, more than two ways, but the two ways I'm going to talk about. One is by putting it in traction. So when I do arm bars, I will stretch it out. And so now you can't use your arm as well because it's in traction. In the case of knee bars, the leg is too long for my torso to really put it in traction very easily. So instead, I'll bend the knee and I'll compress it. So I'll usually take someone's knee like this when I'm sitting on them and pull their knee in towards my own chest and pull their heel and cause compression. Now that I've jammed the joint together so tight, whether it be bent or straight, once again, the signals from their brain, they can't move it as well because it's compressed. And then I'll use that compression combined with gravity and my body weight to straighten their leg out. And once we go back, right, the leg is strong in the middle. It's not strong fully extended and it's not strong fully bent. They want to have their knee around 90 degrees. Near 90 degrees, legs are super strong. They can push from 90 out, but if you fully bend them all the way, not very strong. If you fully straighten them, they're not very strong either. And so I'll then do that. And then the last thing that I'm going to do for isolation is understanding the nature of rotation. So one of my favorite drills, it's on the instructional, is understanding that their foot actually decides which way they can go. And so this isn't the Mikey lock, though it's similar to the Mikey lock. The Mikey lock kind of has a grip where he kind of is like putting a C under it and then covering like this. This is the opposite. I tend to be pulling it up with one and then rear naked choking. Without a leg, it's kind of weird to show you right now. But the idea is I put the foot on either side of of my head, kind of like a pillow. And I understand that if I'm laying on the foot, they can only turn one way. So if I put the foot under my head, then they can turn into me, but they cannot turn away. But if I put the foot on the other side of my head, they can now turn away, but they can't turn into me. And so based on the way that they're trying to escape, I'll move the foot to opposite sides of my head, stopping their rotational escape. And so I kind of break everything down in the instructional to and this is in the finishing part of the instructional, which is worrying about how they're going to escape. Instructional also isn't just technique. It has a bunch of games where you get put in various scenarios where it's like, all right, you started off, you're in this top knee bar position that I teach, and you're going to try to run away. They're not trying to do anything on the right. You have to maintain top position. Well, now, you fell down. Now you have to, while you're down, get back on top of them before they run away. Oh, now we're going to try to isolate the leg. And so it's a bunch of tasks, very similar to it. Because I haven't done enough research, I can't say that I am an ecological dynamics coach. But I do think that a lot of the tools that are presented by coaches who are all the way in that avenue are very valuable. So I'm definitely doing things that are influenced by ecological. Also, there have been some things that I was already doing, and someone's like, "You're doing eco," and I'm like, "This is very beginning. Like, I don't know what that is, but thank you." And so now I had a really long and great conversation with Preet Nicholson in Poland last year, where we then talked for like 2 or 3 hours about eco. Another guy named Rob Cole from BJJ Globetrotters, I had a long talk with him. He's probably the most eco-obsessed person that I know. And so whenever I have an ecological dynamics question, I talk to him. And the last person is a guy who also has instructions on Fanatics. His name is Mike Demko. And he recommended a great book, which I think I'll be forgetting. I think it might be called Peak. I'm not sure. I might be wrong about that. Which talks about just different teaching methods and trying to like understand the nature of measured practice and focused practice and what that actually is and what that isn't. And it really helped me. And so I use some of these things, but I like the idea, even from my very first instructional on Fanatics, I had mini games. So I think that having scenarios where we have a goal and what you're trying to work towards, and then you figure out the task and you problem solve with live resistance is really good. Because if you're just rolling, you're not going to be able to get into that exact scenario very often unless you're so much better than your opponent, right? The great thing about being a black belt in a room full of white and blue belts is that the skill gap is there. I can just force the match to happen almost wherever I want, unless I'm very, very small and they're very, very big, and then I have to have less. But I'm a medium-sized person, so if I find someone my size or smaller who's a white belt, I can decide what part of jiu-jitsu I'm practicing that role. But if you're not, say that you're a beginner or you're smaller, you got to have consent. Hey, here's what I want to do. I'm going to start here. I want you to do this. All right, next round, I want you to do this other thing. I want you to be strong this round. I want you to be fast this round. I want you to be clever this round. I want you to act like you're panicking. And I keep having you put on different personas. The same drill can become 18 drills. And now when you go roll, you've kind of predicted everything that's going on. And you've predicted all the things you can have. So by having my opponent give the amount of effort I want and the type of effort I want, and then later on we mix them together, all of that allows me to get lots of mileage in trying to solve these particular problems, which are going to come up as I'm trying to knee bar somebody. And so I have to give credit to the Bendy and Katie Casimir from King Knee Bar. They're some of my favorite people. Whenever I get to train with them, I get to get more knee bar information. So the part of the instructional that I got from Katie, and so it's the compass knee bar system, because I divide the person's body into north is their head, south is their legs, east and west are their arms. The north side knee bar, which I teach on there, is something that Katie is amazing at. So instead of falling towards their feet or falling left and right, I've always fallen left to right, to the trap side leg or the free side leg. Those are my two favorites. Falling to the feet, the south side knee bar to me has always been my worst knee bar. But with Katie, she falls towards the head. And so you get kind of a little bit of a slew of stretch action. You're stretching the hamstring and knee barring them simultaneously. And it's become one of my new favorites. And I got that from her. So that's included in the instructional. But I love the idea of just, it's very simple. I can fall one of four ways. As I fall one of four ways, here's a plan. Here's a general plan. And where's what I'm trying to do. So that's kind of the premise of the whole instructional, is just looking at the human body as four directions and following those four directions. And then also understanding this connects back to everything, because you can also sit in the saddle and now connect the rest of your leg locks with your knee bar game. So that's my, I guess, pitch for the Compass knee bar system. I think it's a great instructional. My lovely fiance, Natasha, helped me with it. She's the one who demonstrates the live portions. I demonstrate all the technique portions. And I think it's a great instructional. I actually had a really good time filming it. Our cameraman, Luke, was vibing with us the whole way. We had a really good time filming with him. And so like this, you can, I always say, like, there's certain things I filmed over the years that, like, you can feel the energy and how much fun we were having in the instructional. Like, I have a video on YouTube about the elbow frame where, like, it's a video in Poland, and, like, for whatever reason, like, Natasha and I just had so much fun that day, and you can feel the energy in the video that comes through. And I think this instructional is very similar. You can feel how much fun we were having filming.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into it myself. I've seen a little bit of it so far. Like I said, it's a pretty new one, so I look forward to watching more and more of it, because, like I said, the knee bar is a part of my game that I'm really avid, that I'm a big fan of. So looking forward to seeing that and seeing all the things that you provide. If you guys are interested in checking out that instructional, it's at bjjfanatics.com. It's called the Compass knee bar system. So go check that out now.
The other tagline of that, which I think is important, because I almost named it this, and I wanted to have the funny title, it's the double tagline. It's the Compass knee bar system. This is what I do when I sit on you, because I just thought that was hilarious. And that almost was the name of the instructional, but the wise people from BJJ Fanatics said that maybe we should just make that the subheading. And so because people want to know what it's about. If I just called it the instructional, this is what I do when I sit on you, people might not buy it. So, like, I still wanted to include that, because I was so on the fence with, like, wanting to make the title the joke. So
that's awesome. Well, for anyone out there who wants to check it out, it's at bjjfanatics.com. Compass knee bar. Go check it out. Charles, in closing, man, what are some of your major goals for 2025? What are some things you hope to accomplish this year?
Oh man, what great timing. So a good friend of mine. So I have very few people that I've actually promoted in jiu-jitsu. It's a very small list of people. And one of them is my friend Ralph. He's a brown belt under me. So him and my friend Alex, who's a pro belt under me, are my two students that, like, were kind of my first students. When I first started teaching, and I was still a brown belt, and my coach kind of hooked me up with a spot at a small gym once a week teaching. And Ralph was one of my first students, and him and another one of our students named Luke are both brown belts right now, so I'm really proud of them. So he came over, and, like, he wants to start working with me on some projects. And so, like, we just made a bunch of lists. So, like, I guess I got the cool thing where I'm gonna be trying to make more YouTube videos I started collaborating with Less Impressed, more informed or more involved YouTube channel, and the cool stuff that they do. I have this idea for Side Quest Jiu-Jitsu, which would be a series of little mini side quests that I would be giving you somewhat regularly, where I would give you, like, a little quest, and unless your gym also follows me, they wouldn't know what it is, and you'd be trying to do something silly, like surf on someone's back, or, like, see how long you can hold their foot, or you're not allowed to submit people until you score 10 points. There's all kinds of stuff. Or rolling with your eyes closed, a bunch of stuff. There's all of that. And then I want to continue making more instructionals with Fanatics and kind of flesh out all of my jiu-jitsu and record all of it and get it out of my head. And then if I stepping into your realm with a podcast, I recorded a bunch of podcasts back in 2020 that I never released. So it's making myself release those, and then starting the podcast with my buddy Ralph, where we're going to talk jiu-jitsu, and he's going to keep me focused on things. And yeah, so those are the goals. I have some more ideas, but I'm like, let's not brain vomit all of them out right now. But those are the main ones. Those are the things that I'm trying to do, is dive and expand my jiu-jitsu world and get a little bit more consistent with releasing content and sharing. And obviously I have my Patreon right now, and trying to shift and organize that Patreon so that I can give more people more value. Like I make custom videos for people. I do Zoom privates. I do in-person privates. Just trying to set myself so that I can keep doing this thing that I love for as long as possible. I've been really blessed to be able to now. It's been crazy. It's been 8 years since I've left my day job, and jiu-jitsu's been paying the bills. So I guess just keep this cool opportunity going for as long as I can.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Charles, always a pleasure to get to talk with you. I appreciate you always being so generous with your knowledge. And I'm great to hear that you're stateside for now. That means a lot of people in your local area of Florida are going to get to absorb all that knowledge that you always give out so generously, man. I'm excited to see all the things you're doing online through a new podcast, your Patreon, and, of course, plenty of instructionals with us here at BJJ Fanatics. You're welcome back on the show anytime you want to come back, my friend.
Thank you so much, man. It's always been a blast.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Charles, it's real easy to do so. All of his social media is just his name. So whether you're looking for him on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, it's all Charles Harriott. That's also his Patreon that he mentioned earlier. It's patreon.com/Charles Harriott. Website is charlesharriott.com. If you guys are looking to improve your knee bars, he's got several instructionals with us, but the ones that we discussed in depth today was about knee bars. It's his Compass knee bar system, which is his most recent one. Check that out at bjjfanatics.com. If you guys are anywhere near Gainesville, Florida, make sure you check out Rising Tide Jiu-Jitsu. He teaches there once a week, and you can get all information about his seminars and clinics and camps and his tournament, both on his social media and at charlesharriott.com. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.